The moment I slipped on the VR headset, the hum of my apartment faded, replaced by the bustling sounds of ancient Rome. The air smelled faintly of burning olive oil, mingled with the earthy scent of fresh hay and the pungent aroma of the farm's crowded market stalls. I blinked. Well, I tried to blink, though in VR it felt both real and surreal, and suddenly I was standing in the middle of the Roman Forum, the heart of the city. Statues of emperors towered around me, their marble eyes seeming to watch my every move, while senators in flowing togas debated passionately on stone benches. My virtual guide, an AI hologram named Olivia, greeted me warmly. "Welcome, traveler," she said, her voice echoing softly as if through marble halls. "This week you will live as a Roman citizen, experiencing daily life, culture, and the grandeur of our empire." I marveled at her realistic expressions, the way her toga fluttered slightly in the simulated wind, the glint of sunlight on her bronze sandals. I felt more like a participant than a tourist. The first stop was the Colosseum. From the outside, it was immense, more massive than I had imagined. Livia explained that this arena could hold up to 50,000 spectators, cheering for gladiators or watching wild beasts fight. As I walked through the arches, I could hear distant roars and the clanging of swords. VR allowed me to sit in the front row among Roman citizens, senators, and women in elegant stolas, all rendered with breathtaking accuracy. I even experienced a gladiator match simulation, feeling the thrill of combat, the adrenaline, and the roaring crowd, without any real danger, of course. The designers had captured the tension perfectly. The gladiator's sweat, the dust rising from the sand, the nervous whispers from the crowd. I could almost smell the arena's stale air mixed with the faint iron tang of blood. The next day, Livia guided me through Roman daily life. I visited bustling marketplaces where merchants shouted in Latin, selling olives, wine, and exotic spices. I tried bartering using a virtual coin purse, practicing my Latin phrases, which felt oddly satisfying. Street performers juggled, acrobats flipped through the air, and children ran around with wooden toys. Everything was hyper realistic. The textures of stone, the warmth of sunlight on skin, and the distant clanging of a blacksmith hammering bronze. I even joined a family for a simulated Roman dinner, eating virtual lentils, bread, and honeyed wine. The AI simulation adjusted dynamically. The food looked delicious, the conversations around me were lively, and the servants moved efficiently, attending to every need. I could observe class distinctions in action, the patricians in elaborate tunics versus the plebeians working hard in the heat, and the slaves quietly obeying orders, a reminder of the society's complexities. One of my favorite experiences was exploring a Roman bathhouse, a centerpiece of social life. Stepping into the grand hall, I felt the simulated warmth of the water and the faint aroma of oils and herbs. The architecture was stunning: marble columns, mosaic floors, and intricate frescoes depicting gods and myths. Livia explained the bathing rituals and social customs. I even tried using a virtual striggle to scrape my skin, laughing at the absurd realism. Conversations in the bathhouse ranged from philosophy to politics. The AI replicated human chatter so convincingly that I had to remind myself it was all simulated. It felt as though I had truly traveled back 2,000 years. By midweek, I had learned to navigate the streets like a local, stopping at a taberna for breakfast, watching chariot races on large screens projected onto walls, and practicing Latin greetings with AI citizens. The attention to detail was astonishing. The cobblestones were uneven underfoot, pigeons fluttered around the forum, and the sunlight created dynamic shadows that changed with the time of day. VR technology allowed me to feel the rhythm of ancient life, the mix of grandeur and grit, the chaos of crowds, and the serene moments of a quiet courtyard or a shaded garden. Each day I could choose a new role, sometimes a wealthy patrician, sometimes a plebeian laborer, and occasionally a curious traveler like myself. This flexibility made the experience endlessly fascinating. By Thursday, I decided to attend a Roman festival, an AI generated simulation of Saturnalia. The streets were adorned with colorful banners and garlands, and music filled the air. Citizens exchanged gifts, wore masks, and feasted in communal halls. I joined in the festivities, dancing with AI citizens, tasting simulated delicacies like roasted dormice, in VR only, thank goodness, and watching theatrical performances in open air theaters. The sense of immersion was uncanny. I laughed, clapped, and even shouted along with the crowd as though I were truly part of the celebration. One morning, Livia guided me to the Pantheon, a masterpiece of Roman engineering. Standing beneath the vast dome, I was struck by its scale and symmetry. Sunlight streamed through the oculus, illuminating intricate carvings and statues. I could walk around the interior, touch the polished marble, and feel the coolness of the floor beneath my feet. The simulation even recreated echoes perfectly. Every footstep, whisper, and murmur reverberated naturally. I spent hours exploring nearby temples and shrines, learning about Roman religion, the pantheon of gods, and the rituals performed by priests and citizens alike. The AI offered insights into Roman philosophy, morality, and daily superstitions, making me reflect on how different yet familiar their worldview was compared to modern life. One of the most thrilling experiences came when I attended a chariot race at the Circus Maximus. The stands were packed with Romans, waving banners and chanting for their favorite teams. I could feel the rumble of hooves and wheels on sand and the wind against my face as I joined the race from the driver's perspective. The AI simulation calculated realistic physics, the jostling of chariots, the sudden turns, and the near collisions. My heart raced, and I laughed in disbelief at the sheer exhilaration of virtual speed. The race ended, and I mingled with other spectators, experiencing the social side of Roman entertainment. As the week drew to a close, I explored quieter aspects of Roman life. I wandered through gardens with fragrant herbs, watched scholars debate philosophy in libraries, and even practiced writing Latin on wax tablets. VR technology made it possible to experience history interactively. I could pause, rewind, or change my perspective, allowing me to fully appreciate architecture, culture, and daily routines. I reflected on the contrasts between wealth and poverty, power and servitude, leisure and labor, and how these dynamics shaped Roman society. The AI guided reflection exercises encouraged me to connect these observations with modern life, making the experience educational as well as entertaining. On the final day, I revisited my favorite locations: the Colosseum, the Forum, the baths, and a quiet courtyard with the fountain. Standing there, I realized that while I had never physically traveled through time, VR allowed me to experience the texture of daily life, the energy of the city, and the complexity of human civilization. I removed the headset reluctantly, returning to my apartment, but the sights, sounds, and sensations lingered in my mind. Ancient Rome had come alive in ways that textbooks and documentaries could never replicate. VR tourism wasn't just about sightseeing, it was about truly inhabiting another world, feeling its rhythms, and walking in the shoes of people long gone. My week as a virtual tourist had been a journey through time, culture, and human experience, leaving me with a deeper appreciation for the ingenuity and resilience of the Romans and for the power of technology to bring history vividly to life. Secrets of Rome and the lives of its citizens. By the start of the second week, my virtual adventures in Rome had moved beyond the tourist hotspots. Livia suggested I explore the hidden corners of the city, places only locals would frequent. I found myself walking narrow, winding streets that smelled of fresh bread from early morning bakeries, mingled with the earthy scent of livestock and damp stone. Shopkeepers opened their wooden stalls, offering fish, pottery, or fragrant herbs. The VR simulation included tiny details: a rat scurrying into an alley, the faint sound of a water wheel turning in the distance, and children chasing each other while laughing in Latin. It felt astonishingly alive. One day I visited a Roman insula, an apartment block where the plebeians lived. The spaces were cramped, wooden balconies overlooking dusty courtyards, clotheslines crisscrossing above. Families gathered for meals, children played with toys made from clay and wood, and neighbors exchanged gossip. I could touch the rough walls and feel the worn wooden floors under my feet. Livia explained that most citizens of Rome lived in these insulae, while the wealthy occupied sprawling domus with elaborate frescoes, gardens, and fountains. I even interacted with the family, helping them fetch water and observing their daily routines, learning how Roman families worked together to survive and thrive. Experiencing the struggles of ordinary Romans gave me an unexpected sense of empathy for people whose lives were so far removed from the grandeur of monuments and the gladiatorial spectacle. The next day, I immersed myself in Roman religion and spirituality. I visited small shrines tucked into street corners, each with offerings to household gods or lares. Priests conducted rituals at larger temples, and I could participate virtually, lighting incense and offering symbolic gifts. Livia explained that religion was intertwined with politics, social life, and personal decisions. Even the smallest act of devotion carried significance, and citizens consulted omens before major choices. The simulation allowed me to observe ceremonies from multiple perspectives, from a priest's solemn rituals to a merchant offering prayers before opening his shop. Each viewpoint revealed another layer of complexity in Roman belief systems. One of the most fascinating parts of the week was visiting the Roman Senate. I appeared virtually in the Grand Hall, a silent observer among senators in flowing togas, debating laws and military strategies. I could move invisibly among them, overhearing speeches that ranged from eloquent rhetoric to cunning political maneuvers. The AI recreated not only the dialogue, but also subtle gestures, expressions, and tension in the room. I could sense alliances forming, arguments flaring, and the careful calculation behind every word. For a moment, I almost forgot I was a VR tourist, feeling like a fly on the wall of history. Livia encouraged me to note how politics, rhetoric, and public perception shaped decisions, parallels I could draw to modern governance and media influence. Later in the week, I explored Roman entertainment beyond the Colosseum. I attended a theatrical performance in an open-air theater, watching actors perform comedies and tragedies in masks. I could explore backstage areas, observing actors applying makeup, rehearsing lines, and adjusting elaborate costumes. The realism of movement and sound made the experience astonishing. Livia also guided me to musical performances and poetry readings in private gardens, where Roman elites gathered for intellectual entertainment. I could interact with the audience, nodding, applauding, or even attempting to participate in poetry recitation. These moments highlighted how deeply Roman culture valued artistic expression alongside military and political achievements. By the weekend, I ventured further to the outskirts of Rome, where farmers tilled fields and tended livestock. I could plow a virtual field, herd sheep, and even experience a harvest festival. The AI simulation captured seasons, weather, and the cyclical rhythm of agricultural life. I realized how dependent the city was on the countryside, and how wealth, politics, and daily life in Rome were tied to the land, trade, and labor of ordinary people. The contrast between urban grandeur and rural toil gave me a profound appreciation for the intricate fabric of Roman society. As part 3 ended, I felt that my experience was no longer mere sightseeing. I had started to understand the social dynamics, moral values, and personal struggles of citizens from all walks of life. VR had blurred the line between observer and participant, and I had begun to empathize with people whose lives had existed centuries before me. The simulation encouraged curiosity, reflection, and engagement with history in ways that felt both personal and transformative. By the final days of my VR adventure, I focused on reflection and cultural immersion. Livia suggested I revisit favorite locations, but also take time to observe without interference, to walk through streets, watch citizens interact, and contemplate the essence of Roman life. I wandered the forum at sunrise, when merchants were just setting up their stalls and the light hit marble statues with golden warmth. For a moment, I was utterly alone, surrounded by history. I could hear the faint clip of sandals on stone, the rustle of robes, and distant voices debating philosophy. The attention to sensory detail, the temperature of the stone, the play of shadows, the distant sounds of animals made me realize how much effort the designers had put into creating a living, breathing Rome. One of the most meaningful experiences was attending a Roman philosophical debate. Citizens gathered in a courtyard, discussing ethics, politics, and virtue. I could choose a role: silent observer, participant, or recorder. I chose to participate, asking questions about justice and governance. The AI citizens responded thoughtfully, drawing from historical sources and philosophy. I found myself reflecting on parallels to modern life, considering the responsibilities of citizens, the balance of power, and the moral challenges faced by societies across time. The simulation encouraged not only historical understanding, but also personal introspection, a surprising side effect of virtual immersion. I also spent time exploring the sensory pleasures of Rome. I visited a wine cellar, sampling virtual vintages, and a garden filled with herbs, flowers, and fountains. I wandered through bakeries, touching bread and pastries, hearing the crackle of ovens, and inhaling the aroma of baked goods. Every detail, texture, sound, and even virtual taste was meticulously designed. These interactions, though not physically real, created a sense of intimacy with daily life that no textbook or film could replicate. I could smell, touch, and interact with the environment, making the experience deeply memorable. One afternoon, I revisited the Colosseum. This time, I sat in the highest seats, watching a simulated reenactment of history rather than a game. I could zoom into individual spectators, seeing fear, excitement, or indifference. I watched gladiators train in barracks, preparing mentally and physically for combat. Observing their courage and resilience, I felt a profound connection to individuals who lived under the pressures of survival, honor, and entertainment in an unforgiving world. VR allowed me to see both the spectacle and the human cost, creating a layered understanding of Roman entertainment and societal values. On my final day, I walked the Via Appia, the ancient road lined with tombs, aqueducts, and villas. I paused at a small cemetery, watching families pay homage to ancestors. Livia encouraged me to reflect on legacy and memory, how people, events, and cultures are remembered, reconstructed, and interpreted across time. I realized that VR tourism was more than historical entertainment. It was a bridge to empathy, understanding, and curiosity. I had not only explored the architecture, politics, and entertainment of Rome, but had also felt the lives, struggles, and joys of its citizens in a visceral, unforgettable way. As I removed the headset for the last time, I felt a mixture of awe, nostalgia, and gratitude. Ancient Rome had been reconstructed not just as a series of monuments, but as a living world filled with complexity, vibrancy, and humanity. I carried back lessons about resilience, cultural richness, social dynamics, and personal reflection. My week as a VR tourist had shown me that technology could bring history to life, transform learning into experience, and connect us across time in deeply human ways. Though I returned to my modern apartment, I knew that the streets of Rome, the voices of its citizens, and the grandeur of its civilization would linger in my imagination forever.